Our next rule is called the power to a power rule. In this case, we have 5 to the third, which is a number with an exponent, and we're going to raise that to the fifth power. So there's two exponents here is basically what it means. So the best way to understand this is to start with the steps we have over here to the right, is to first rewrite it as repeated factors. So this means my set of parentheses needs to be written out 5 times. So 5 to the third, 5 to the third, and then each of these needs to be expanded. That would be step 2. So this would be 5 times 5 times 5, 5 times 5 times 5. So there you can see I magically have I've expanded each of these 5 to the third powers. So that's a lot of 5s there. So we can count them up and see how many we have and rewrite this as an exponent. So that would be kind of like our simplifying. So we can tell if we count them up, there's 15 5s here. So that would be 5 to the 15th power. And that's our simplified version right there. Now I have written here on this note sheet something that we can notice. What we're looking for is how can we go from our original expression 5 to the third to the fifth power all the way down here to 5 to the 15th without doing all of this expanding. So I want you to pause it for a minute and see if you can figure out a way to skip all of that writing. Now looking at number 2, we're going to do the same thing, is we're going to rewrite it as repeated factors. So that means 4 to the third is raised to the fourth power. So we have to write the 4 to the third. Sorry about that. Here we go. Let me write that 4 to the third 4 times. 4 to the third. Let's think of our exponent as telling us how many copies to make. So this means make 4 copies of what's in the parentheses. Now our next step is to expand each of those. So each set of parentheses is 4 to the third power, which means 4 times 4 times 4. Remember, an exponent tells us we have 3 copies of the 4. So now pause the video and expand this one out. So we've expanded each of these 4 to the third powers, and now if we look at all of these, I've written 4 copies of my 4 to the third power. So in the end, I expanded out and I had to write down 12 of those. So that means it's 4 to the 12th power. So you should be looking for a connection between my exponents in the original problem. How did we go from 4 to the third power to the fourth to 4 to the 12th? Pause the video for just a second and see if you can notice how we would get to that without expanding. Maybe you've discovered by now, but we'll talk about what that actual law is in just a minute. Now we have a variable. Instead of using a number, we're raising the x to the second power. And then we're going to take the x squared and raise that to the 7th power. So this means I have 7 copies of my x squared. So go ahead and pause the video and rewrite that as repeated factors like we did in the first 2 examples. So now I have 7 copies of my x squared. And now I'm going to expand that by expanding my x squareds, writing them as x times x. Pause the video and go ahead and do that. So I've made 7 copies of x squared. So that means 7 times I had to write x times x, which ends up giving us x to the 14th power. So hopefully by now you have noticed that our rule or our law of a power to a power, all we have to do is multiply those exponents. Because I had x squared and I had to write that down 7 times. So 7x squareds means I'm going to have to write out that x 14 times. So that is our next rule or law of exponents is when we have a power raised to a power, all we have to do is multiply the exponents. Now notice the base stays the same because it's that x that we're repeatedly writing, or it's a 2 or it's a 5, whatever it is, that stays the same, and we just simply multiply those exponents.